It's just okay. And I believe that we are going live at this stage. Let's just get the confirmation from the team that we are officially live. And in the meantime, let us wait for the community all to join the live stream. Welcome for the ones who are joining. And we are live. Welcome to the Scale Up Valley podcast, where we bring the best tech leaders to share with you their scaling up journeys, their scaling up lessons, scaling a business from 2 million to 100 million ARR. Today, I have a very special guest. She is Anna Gong, the CEO at Perx Technologies. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. Pleasure to be here.
My pleasure. So let us help us to get to know a little bit more about yourself and who is Anna and how did you start Perx Technologies?
Wow. How do I sum it up in the short? Well, I think my career started out in Silicon Valley, 12 years. And so I was groomed from a baby to a full-fledged professional, having been there for a dozen years. And I was always addicted to, or even surrounded by startups. So I had a series of startup experiences, a total of 4 startups in the Bay Area. And it so happens that one of them successfully exited to CA Technologies. This is when I was at Wyatt. And so I got propelled into Asia, the opportunity to run the business here and help them scale the acquisition. And that's when I moved to Japan, spent a couple of years in Japan in 2009, and then moved to Singapore in 2011. And I've been here ever since, and this is my 5th startup experience. And so a combination of MNCs, multinational, as well as startups. But I'm just addicted to risk taking. I'm a bit of a maverick, so I don't think I can survive in big companies anymore. I like to challenge the status quo. So a lot of that comes from the startup mentality.
Got it. Sounds great. And what is Perx Technologies and how are you trying to change the world and disrupt the industry?
Right. So we realize that there's a gap in the marketplace, especially in Asia, where everything is now mobile led. So we developed a B2B SaaS platform that's focusing on solving a lot of the B2C enterprises, customer engagement and loyalty challenges. Most of us who bank or work with telcos or have insurance portfolios, we never really been engaged in a relevant way, and nor is it proactive. So I think when you talk about direct to consumer challenges, a lot of these companies are solving their digital transformation, not just from an infrastructure perspective, but everything now is consumer driven. And finally, when we say consumer centricity and customer centricity, it really means in customers, finally. And I think Asia's been in the forefront of that because there's so much leapfrogging. You hear a lot about super apps, and there's another big term that's been thrown around left and right and center. And these super apps are now everything under the sun. So it's like a smorgasbord of services that you can consume: massage, health and wellness, rides, food delivery, chiropractors, fixing, so anything that you want in one single app is called a super app. And so I think Asia is now defining that whole market. And a lot of the banks and telcos and all these big enterprises are competing with them.
Got it. And in terms of the stage of the company, so what is the head count at this stage?
We're at 65 and we're growing rapidly. And so we're hiring, we're not hiring fast enough, unfortunately, but we want to grow to about 100 in the next 6 months. So really scaling across the region as well as globally with some of our partners.
That's great. In terms of fundraising, you have raised Series B, do you want to share some of the investors that are backing Perx Technologies? I think it are very interesting.
Right, right. We had initially Eduardo Saverin, co-founder of Facebook, funding us and really supportive of our endeavors and the vision that I delivered to him. And then we started to raise additional money through Golden Gate Ventures, who's also been quite supportive. The new batch on Series B, Lime Ventures came in, co-invested with Eduardo Saverin, Golden Gate, and these companies. Encore Ventures is a Korean-backed CVC, and Access Ventures is a earlier stage investment venture fund, and they're going into the fund too. So we have a number of various CVCs as well as strategic investors, capital management. They're a family office, but they are heavily into private equity as well. So Asia is a mixed bag. For the life of me, I couldn't find the right investors because B2B was very nascent in this market. We're probably one of the first pioneering batches of B2B SaaS platforms in Asia. And B2C has been taking the toll, right? They're the ones who are taking a lot of the money, making a lot of the noises, but now it's saturated. And investors want to see more sustainable and not race to the bottom kind of business models, right? And so B2B.
That's great, which means that you are pioneering a new trend in the region, and you would be also helping the next generations of B2B SaaS entrepreneurs who want to learn from you. And let's do it already today. For the ones who are joining us for the first time, we always have those conversations around a set of very simple habits. We will cover 3 of those 10 habits that we believe would help you to scale from 2 million to 100 million by tripling 2 times and doubling 3 times. So tripling, which means that you would go from 2 to 6 and from 6 to 18, and then doubling 3 times, which would be 18 to 36, 36 to 72, and 72 to 144 million. So the important thing is 100 million plus. If you add additional 2 years of mistakes that you found growth plateaus, or that you make the wrong decisions, and another 2-3 years of product market fit, you would get the usual decade if everything goes well, as I like to say. So that's the investment of an entrepreneur, and congrats for that. And so bringing the first topic, or the first habit, which is the executive team is healthy and aligned. What was the most difficult VP to hire so far?
Ooh, that's tough. If I was in Silicon Valley, it would be a very different discussion. But in Asia, I think engineering leadership is very challenging to hire for. You have to have the business acumen. There are a lot of glorified developers and engineers, but not a lot of leadership here and not a lot of management. So you can see the engineering leaders have been hired from the West. And so it's a very common, I think, challenge across the industry here. The other one is if you're going global and if you're building SaaS, which Asia is not very used to homegrown SaaS platforms, especially selling to the enterprise, it's been dominated by the traditional guys like Oracle, Salesforce, IBM, and all these big traditional guys. And then the number of plethora of different growth startups like ServiceNow and MuleSoft, and those exited very successful. But when you look at hiring a global revenue leader, it's very different as well, because the mindset, if what got you here won't get you there. Yeah. And we're building a very high velocity, high scaling business model. Traditionally, if you're selling on-prem solutions and now you're selling SaaS solutions, the business model is very different. So I think that in terms of finding the right DNA to support your growth endeavors is very tough, as well as looking at how to bridge that gap between Asia and Silicon Valley mindset, the Western mindset that I so happened to have a lot of challenges. So I hire poorly. I made a lot of mistakes, and you learn from those mistakes and you right course your mistakes. So I will probably continue to make a lot of mistakes, but hopefully these micro
Thanks.
mistakes will, be smaller and smaller.
Absolutely. Got it. And we always talk about the evolution of the leadership team and how important it is to anticipate the next positions, even the structure of leadership team. I like to call about moving from the founding team to the leadership team 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and always be working on the next version of the leadership team and working on a pipeline of future VPs that would be important at a certain point to join the company, as we do with investors as well. How important is it to you to work regularly on the structure and on the talent that you want to bring to your leadership team and to develop your leadership team? So yeah, if you can share what has been the evolution, what were the positions that you started to hire, what you are looking for in the future?
Yeah, so right now we're looking for more leadership, balanced leadership, and not per se the C levels, but the mid management to be able to lead and grow into those leadership positions,
Interesting.
scale. Um, we don't want everybody to be generalists or jack of all trades anymore. We kind of gone beyond that. We need now more expertise, very deep knowledge in certain domains. And so when we scale out, I think we would need to find those niche leaders to focus on certain areas, like how do we build a fintech marketplace, a rewards marketplace, gamification, and are you loyalty specialists? And so even finding the right product managers, you have to then put them in a domain expertise rather than generalizing them, because now our platform is getting more deep as well as broader. And so finding those people will be really critical for the next stage. And then sales reps. We're a completely direct to our customers. It's a direct sales model. And SaaS is really hard to find a channel ecosystem. We don't have heavy services. We go live within days or a few weeks. So even with large enterprises, so then how do you partner with the traditional resellers or SIs? Even some of our customers have actually pushed out their SIs that they worked with for so many years. And now we have a direct relationship with our customers. And so those are dynamics that are changing greatly. We've seen in the market. So, hiring the right folks to sell strategically. And then we're launching a self-serve platform in the coming weeks, and that will enable us to really go live. And we're open sourcing our product and framework. So that's also another first in Asia to do so. So we're doing a lot of first stuff, and you guys are the first to hear this.
That's awesome.
We're announcing this in the next few weeks and the greater scale, but I'm really proud of some of the innovations that my head of engineering is driving. We went from a very sales-led organization now to more of a product-led organization. And so we want to create a global community of kick-ass developers and engineers contributing to the platform.
Got it. That's awesome. And let's bring the habit number 2. If we have the right team and the right people on the right seats, now it's time to think about the direction. So where we want to go and what is the next milestone to get closer to this big area, audacious goal. We all know that going through those stages from C to Series A, from Series A to Series B, and now going from Series B to a potential Series C, who knows the future. It's all about sharpening the saw and narrowing the focus of the company. So what has been the most difficult decisions that you made until now in terms of defining specific verticals, defining what are your core competencies, defining what is your moat, what are the geos that you are targeting? So, all these questions that are in the mind of the entrepreneur as they get more clarity about their business, and avoiding trying to do everything for everyone, which is the meaning of strategic mediocrity. And so how has it been for you to define this next big milestone when there are so many things that we can do in the business?
Well, I come from a sales background, but a technology and sales background. So I always give our team a stretch goal, and we're looking at growing 5x this year. So that's
Well
really
done.
if we go and meet 3x, 4x, I'm still very happy.
Well
But
done.
these are the BHAGs that we have internally, as well as, to the market. As startups, we want to go bigger than what we can achieve. And so if you have these stretch goals, why not, right? We're not answering to Wall Street. So if we can do a few of these things right, we can definitely achieve it. The BHAGs is growing beyond Southeast Asia and Hong Kong. We're in 7 countries now, and we want to be able to go across to the rest of Asia Pacific, perhaps, as well as Europe and US. We just came back from Oracle Open World, and Oracle working with us as one of their preferred loyalty and engagement startups globally. And so they're asking us to support them in the North American market. And so it's a lot of demand coming from these global partnerships where we have to make some very strategic decisions coming up. And then, looking at how do we scale and effectively, we still have to be hyper focused. I think it's really easy to get distracted. A lot of our, I would say the traditional platforms and the ad tech folks have been going after retail and FMCG brands and CPG brands. And we actually focus mostly on banking, insurance, and telcos. And those were the verticals that we picked because they have the most budget. They are very innovative in their natures because they have to, and they're very sophisticated in the next generation of technologies, and they're lower maintenance, right? If you look at retail and FMCG and CPG brands, they are much more high maintenance and less sophisticated than the traditional, very tech-focused organizations. And so we see that as we evolve, we want to focus more on engagement and actually help these organizations to monetize on the existing base, and where the retail and these other companies are focusing way too much on ad tech. And ad tech is now being pummeled. Agencies are being pummeled and hammered on, can you expose the ROI? Can you quantify the investments I've made with your organizations? And the vanity metrics don't really, they don't matter anymore. 1 million likes on Facebook, what is it quantifying to revenue? And, click-throughs and page views are not enough anymore. So we've seen a lot of large corporations pushing back. And if you can, like Perx platform, we can help you drive visibility into every single campaign and create ROI around those. If we are not measuring ROI, that's not, I advise a lot of the executives to rethink what kind of marketing investments they're making.
Got it. So it's good to see that your verticals are super clear and why you choose those. So you said banking, insurance, telco. I assume you are very focused on enterprise or also mid-markets and small business.
It's funny that you say that. Even though we have a lot of the regional tier 1 brands and global brands on our portfolio, but we actually aimed after challenger companies. So if you're on your home turf and you're number 1, number 2, or even number 3, you're going to be very complacent. But if I go to a different market where you're number 2 or number 3, and you really are trying to pump, up your branding and your growth strategy, we go after those challenger brands, despite that you could be HSBC, you could be a challenger in other markets. So we work with them first and create these amazing successful use cases, and then show the ROI, and then we start to help them expand into other regions. And then their counterparts would see that we're driving a lot of successes in that particular market. And so the adoption gets viral as the land and expand strategy. We also have selectively worked with specific retail conglomerates. And Asia is very different from the Western market. The top few families own pretty much almost everything in Asia, in each country. So we choose to work with the family offices that own hotels, retail, supermarkets, banks. Some of them own not just hospitality, but they own almost everything. So if we go after one family brand, they would then start to multiply that effect. So we don't go with chains. Like, I'm not interested in serving with my small team an outlet, retail outlet with 20 chain or 20 outlets. It's actually not, I don't have the bandwidth to support a high maintenance account. I'd rather do the same for a bank that has $1 billion in budget to spend on the next generation of digital transformation. So it's a very different story. So we have to be hyper focused, and we're very selective of the accounts that we're working with.
Got it. That's cool. And just a note for the audience, look for the kind of focus, and congrats for this. And it's very rare to see this and see you, especially at this stage of your kind of 80-20 rule always applying. So what are the verticals where we can win over our competitors that are low maintenance for this stage of company and that can have the larger return on the short term? Anna is not denying the potential and the size of the market. She's just prioritizing where the efforts and the investment might have more return on the short term from your interpretation of the market, of course. And let's come to habit number 3, which is related to execution. So if we have the right team or the right people on the right seats, focus it on the right milestones and direction to shift the vision. It's now all about execution and the speed of execution. So what kind of rhythms do you have in the company? Or even better, we all have the same kind of rhythms, but what are the rhythms that are more important to you? What are the rituals of the team that are more important to you to speed up execution?
I think building velocity is about operational excellence. How well are you managing your sales ops? How well are you applying, marketing and digital marketing and content? We've actually for first couple of years, we only focused mainly on inbound, and so we rarely did ABM, and our marketing budget is so slim that regardless, we now have 60 to 70% of our inbound or our leads coming from inbound activity. So
awesome.
We haven't been making a lot of effort because if you're drowning in leads, what's the point of doing all these other campaigns? So we've been very fortunate at the amount of money that we're spending on digital marketing and content that we're driving that kind of traffic inbound. So we have barely opened the pipe. So in the next phase, we will actually do a lot more A/B testing on, replacement campaigns, a lot of ABMs, and also more sophisticated content-driven activity. And because we're launching the self-serve platform, I think having a sustainable CS organization, customer success team. Currently, we have negative churn, which is, it's hard to tell investors what that means because they're so used to churn. and because we're only serving large enterprises, they're very sticky. But if we're actually opening up the platform for organizations of all sizes, we started out in enterprise, which is very stupid and dumb in most circumstances, but we did it the hardest way rather than the SMB up, which most platforms do. But we started really in a difficult trajectory, solve the enterprise problems first, build a very rich and platform, innovative platform, and then go downstream. Now we're actually finding our way through that. Actually, despite large organizations, SMEs actually also deserve the same user experience. So we developed this new technology where we have to then figure out how to scale customer success. Today, we don't really have a big CS team. We don't really need it.
Got it. It's interesting to see also the opposite movement, and sometimes it's very difficult at a certain stage where you are super strong in small businesses or in mid-sized businesses to kind of go upstream and also to dedicate and really define as a milestone to go enterprise and a priority where you invest the resources and where you focus the company. It's very difficult when 80% or 90% of your business comes from the other segments. Cool. And let's go to Cash, to the last section of the show. We all know how important it is cash. Without cash, there is no future, there is no business, huge pressure, and we might be in a very difficult situation. So how did you went through the different fundraising rounds? So what was important to you to raise Series A first and then to raise Series B?
So Series A was a difficult one because it was the pivot, and you're selling just a vision, and it was a round that was the most difficult to raise. So we found Golden Gate and Eduardo Savran, who continuously supported us, and so they started that fund during the Series A with us, and then moving to B, because there are not that many B2B SaaS platforms out here. I had the toughest time raising, and I actually wanted to raise 10 million so that I have enough runway to not think about things so I can scale effectively. But I ended up having a really hard time articulating and we're getting to the VCs that understood large enterprise SaaS. So, and then the US VCs and the Western VCs they don't really have the appetite to invest in Asia because they have so much pipeline in their home markets already. So we had so that's why I call it our first pioneering batch, which is we've already brainwashed the VCs. We got their appetite really, you know, heavily into thinking about SaaS now, and also the market's pushing them into that space too because B2C is so saturated. But the B round. So I had to just compromise. I had to make sure that I was running out of money. So if I don't, finalize this round, I needed to rethink our strategy, but I raised instead of 10, I raised 5 only. And we were able to last 18 months, and I'm raising my C round in the coming January, early part of this 2020. And so I think with the growth that we're aiming for, it's a very it's a sweet spot for a lot of VCs to come into this round now.
Got it. Any cash advice for startups out there? I see that you keep your burn rates under control. You try to be very nimble across customer success and marketing. Any cash lessons that you could share with the audience?
Oh, there's not one recipe. I think everybody goes through their own journey. But for us, we ran out of money, multiple times. We thought that we could last but we ended up constantly raising bridge rounds here and there because the unsophistication of the market here. But now I think the investors are getting savvier, so I don't think for the next batch coming in would be that difficult. And then also there's a crowded fintech play in Asia, right? Singapore is the hub for all fintech startups here, and it's quite crowded. And then there's a lot of VC money pumped into that space. But cash-wise, we're deliberately burning for the right reasons. If we didn't want to scale across markets and become a global player or a much bigger regional player, then yeah, we can be profitable. We can just be in the home market for a few countries and then call it a day. But go big or go home. I didn't start this company or be in the startup game just to be a small player. We're beating some of the global established software companies, which is a validation in itself, and we want to continue doing that, and we want to impact the ecosystem even more so. So that's something, cash is, there's no right recipe, but we're burning still, and we will continue to burn for probably the next 12 months.
And especially finding this balance when you are being too risk adverse and you are spending less than what you should be spending and being less aggressive than what you should be, to be becoming too aggressive before testing out where you are investing and creating a very complex situation later, because then you can show the metrics to raise the next round. And this balance is a little bit more complicated if we are being too risk adverse, or are we being too ambitious and we are not taking care of the future of the company and of the journey of the marathon, let's say. It's not a sprint, correct?
Right.
That's great. And what's next? So what do you think are the next big milestone for the next 12 months or 24 months for Perx Technologies?
Well, we are strategically looking for partners and new acquisitions as well in the advanced analytics space, as well as some companies that are already existing. I think a lot of our competitors have pulled out of this market, which is great for us, or they're slowing down, or they're unable to execute at the rate that they were supposed to. So we're seeing us as one of the few players in Asia, and it's great to be in this situation. But for us, it's really about building velocity and growing bigger. My whole thing is to grow 3 to 5x now in the next 2-3 years. So it's a lot of stretch goals for the company. But I think with some of the stuff that we're doing globally with our partners and some strategic deals that we're working on, it's not impossible.
I usually ask on the show if our guests believe that it is sustainable to always 2 or 3x the company results to stay in the championship or in the of VC. And it's good to see that you are not even questioning that we should 2 or 3x. You are even going beyond and saying we want to 5x, but we would be happy with 3 or 4x. So that's great to see. And let's go for the last question of the show, one of our favorites, which is, if you would have the opportunity to meet yourself at the beginning of Perx Technologies, what advice would you offer to your younger self?
Oh, goodness. Be less impatient. Always been a very impatient person, and learning how to pause a bit. I started building a lot more mindfulness and meditation into my lifestyle, and that's really sustained me in the last 2-3 years, especially as rocky as the growth stage that we were in. So it's been tremendous help, but definitely be more patient, and it's okay to pause. I've learned that from some of the most successful entrepreneurs. In fact, they actually have a Bali retreat every year for a couple of batches of startup founders to go to Bali and pause a little. So I wish I had that. I've known about that long time back, but I did exercise that retreat, and it was fantastic.
That's great. I've heard about that retreat. I'm not sure what is the partner of one of the investors in the region that organizes this retreat, right?
It was Monk's Hill, right? Peng
Correct,
Ang.
Monk Hill, exactly. I met last August one of the partners in Bangkok when we were leading some scale-up workshops across the region, and good to see that the community is together, and I think that everyone was enjoying a lot being in a small group of CEOs and founders and really sharing experiences at the same time, kind of chill out and rest a little bit and get perspective.
And you're not alone, right?
And
And
you are not alone. Exactly.
everybody is in a very messed up business, and the challengers are so great, but yet, we still wake up with so much ammunition and motivation. It feels wonderful.
Anna, this podcast, I can say it was really a conversation, and it was really a pleasure to host you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike, and it's been a pleasure.
Perfect. And to our community, thank you so much for joining us. You all know that we are always open to new challenges, to have new guests, new topics that might be useful to you to scale your business from 2 million to 100 million ARR. Thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.
Thank you.